do the players build their own characters like beforehand, or do you give them like a baseline? Like, do you tell them all this information? You're like, all right, who's your character and all this, or do you kind of just work together? How does that play out?
Yeah, so usually when you're starting a new campaign is what it's called. When you're going to get together and you're going to tell a story, you call that series of adventures a campaign. So when you start a campaign, usually you have what's called a session zero. So before you actually start playing the game, the dungeon master sits down with the players and says, "This is the kind of game we're going to play." So my game, we're heavy on role play, so we try and inhabit our characters as best we can. So when the player speaks, the character is speaking,
Oh
and
wow.
they'll have conversations with one another in character.
Oh
So it's a
wow.
lot like, think about like old radio shows, like Lone Ranger or whatever, where people used to sit in front of the radio and listen to people tell stories, and you'd have the narrator who was like, the Lone Ranger gallops along next to the train and then leaps off and gets on the train. So that's kind
Right.
of what we do, and then you'll have the Lone Ranger talking to the bad guy. I've never seen that show, but he's doing his cowboy thing, trying to talking to the sheriff or whatever,
Right.
and they're just having conversations in character. That's kind of how Dungeon Stories works. We like I'll set things up as the dungeon master. I'll narrate kind of what's going on, and then the players will tell me what they're doing, and they'll talk in character.
Oh, interesting.
But essentially, so in this session zero, we sit down and we describe what kind of game we're going to want. So I want like a heavy role play game. So really think about your characters a lot. Um, and then there's so much Dungeons and Dragons like material out there. There's a bunch of different books that they use for rules and stuff like that. So I'll kind of tell them what rules they can, what books they can take stuff from. Um, and then we kind of build our characters together. So I gave them like an overview of the world. I kind of showed them the maps that I drew, told them where certain places were, and then based on that, they come up with their characters. And then they kind of come up with a story for their character, and then I kind of help them work that into the world. So when it comes to like making characters, I like to let the players like,
Make their own.
yeah, they I like to let them kind of go at it, come up with who they want to be, and then from there we'll work it into the world instead of doing it the other way around. Instead of me
Right.
saying, so this is what you should do, I like to let them do
Kind of
it
build their
and then
own.
try and work it in. Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense, though.